Hello and welcome to Catholic News Roundup. I'm Christine Niles. Today's July 26th, 2025, which happens to be my birthday. Here are this week's top stories. Doctors are harvesting organs from live patients. This according to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who announced Monday that his Department of Health and Human Services is reforming organ donation in light of abuse. Our findings show that hospitals allow the organ procurement process to begin when patients showed signs of life, and this is horrifying, said Kennedy. An investigation of 351 cases shows more than 100 organs harvested from people with signs of life. At least 28 patients may not even have been deceased. One disturbing case at Baptist Health Hospital in Richmond, Kentucky last year reveals a man was alive and asking for help just before organ harvesting, but doctors were told to ignore it.
And there's documentation, the medical documentation, that they were found to be brain dead, but then they apparently woke up. And can you tell us a little bit more about what you've heard on that? I understand you didn't do the full investigation, but you're working with the state of Kentucky, the Commonwealth of Kentucky on that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I spoke to the Kentucky Attorney General yesterday, who sprung into action and pulled a whole team together on this. And I understand that they're diving deeper into this specific allegation and are even monitoring this hearing today.
All right, I appreciate that. Also heard that there might be a story where somebody actually mouthed the words "help me" before somebody realized that they weren't a potential donor. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is an allegation I heard recently. I understand that whistleblower has been in touch with your committee. What was relayed to me was that, yes, he was instructed to recover organs from someone who was mouthing the words "help me," decided not to proceed, and the person ended up surviving.
Turning to Michigan, 3 professors have been abruptly fired from Detroit's Seminary. Only 5 months after arriving, Archbishop Edward Weisenberger this week terminated longtime professors Ralph Martin, Ed Peters, and Eduardo Echeverria without providing reasons why. Martin wrote, "When I asked him for an explanation, he said he didn't think it would be helpful to give any specifics, but mentioned something about having concerns about my theological perspectives. This news came as a shock. I have contributed much to the seminary over more than 23 years. Weisenberger is also eliminating most of the traditional Latin masses in Detroit and is banning ad orientem worship in the Novus Ordo Mass. The U.S. Olympics is officially banning men from women's sports. In its new athlete safety policy, the committee makes clear it will conform its rules to President Trump's executive order, signed in February, protecting female athletes. This comes shortly after the University of Pennsylvania stripped male swimmer Leah Thomas of his titles and awards and apologized to female swimmers for allowing him to compete and forcing them to undress in front of him 18 times a week. Last year, scandal erupted when Paris Olympics allowed male boxer Imane Khalif to compete against women, winning gold. While his supporters claimed he was intersex, medical testing proved he was biologically male. He is now banned from competing in women's world boxing events. And turning to Ireland, the country's abortion rate has spiked 63% over the last 5 years. The number of unborn deaths rose to nearly 11,000 last year, up from 6,666 abortions in 2019, when abortion was first legalized. Bishop Kevin Doran of Elphin said, "Most of the same arguments that were used to legitimize abortion 7 years ago are now being used to justify a change in the law to allow assisted suicide and euthanasia. When we said this in the past, we were ridiculed, but it is absolutely clear now how right we were." And turning to Gaza, more than 100 aid groups are calling the food shortage mass starvation. Doctors Without Borders, Save the Children, Oxfam International, and many others signed a joint statement blaming Israel's siege for causing the crisis. According to the World Health Organization, at least 70 children have starved to death this year. Israel is pushing back, with spokesman David Mencer denying any famine, claiming it's, quote, a man-made shortage engineered by Hamas. Shootings by Israeli soldiers around food distribution centers have resulted in more than 1,000 deaths. Israel claims they shot only those who posed a threat, but British surgeon Nick Maynard claims otherwise.
And I operate on many of those children. I saw young teenage boys, sometimes as young as 11, 12, 13, who had been shot at these food distribution points. They had gone there to get food for their starving families, and they were being shot. And I operate on many of them. One 12-year-old boy died on the operating table when we were operating because his injuries were so severe. And what was even more distressing was the pattern of injuries that we saw, the clustering of injuries to particular body parts on certain days. So one day they'd be coming in predominantly with gunshot wounds to the head or the neck, another day to the chest, another day to the abdomen. And I operated one day on half a dozen young boys, all of whom had severe abdominal injuries. One day, 12 days ago, 4 young teenage boys came in, all of whom had been shot in the testicles, and deliberately so. And this is not coincidental. The clustering was far, far too obvious to be coincidental. And it seemed to us like this was almost like a game of target practice. We're going to shoot the head today, tomorrow it'll be the chest, the next day it'll be the testicles.
And in Japan, a new bell rings for Nagasaki. 80 years to the day Urakami Cathedral was destroyed by the atomic bomb, a new bell will be placed in its bell tower. It's the result of a year-long fundraising effort by Williams College professor James Nolan, a Catholic whose grandfather was a doctor at Los Alamos, New Mexico, where the atomic bomb was first developed. The bell will be formally installed on August 9th and rung at 11:02 a.m., the exact time 8 decades ago that the U.S. dropped the atomic bomb on the city, killing roughly 70,000 people, including Catholic parishioners and priests inside the church. Nagasaki has always been the Catholic center of Japan. That is this week's Catholic News Roundup. You can support us by visiting stellamaris.media and signing up to our email list for the latest news and updates. Thank you so much for watching. May God bless your week. I'm Christine Niles.